To be in class today to go over these with you. We are studying the three branches of government, and today we are going to be talking about the legislative branch. What I'd like for you to do is to please open up a Microsoft Word document, and I'm going to show you not only going to be learning about one branch of government, but we're actually going to be learning about all three. Give me 1 second to get my computer up and running here. It's getting to be a little bit of an old computer as I'm doing this, so it sometimes takes a minute. With the Microsoft Word document that you're going to open, let me open a new blank document. Okay. Now, the format you're going to want to go to, at the bottom here it says Notebook Layout View. I would open that up just like that. And then notice here where it says Section 1, Section 2, Section 3. What I think is going to be really helpful to all of you this unit is if you basically highlight this and you say, okay, this is going to be my legislative branch notes. And then this Section 2 here, that would be the second branch that we're going to talk about later this week, which is going to be the executive branch. And hopefully you guys got this question right on your test the other day. The third branch is the judicial branch. And then you might even add in, I think we're going to have another section of notes that you will all be taking on the U.S. Census. And so I think it's going to be really helpful when you're taking notes today. You can just click on legislative branch, but then later this week when we do the executive branch, then you can just click on this one, type in executive, and then when you go to look these notes up later this unit, which you'll be doing for at least one of our assignments, all you have to do, if you're saying, okay, you don't have to look at 4 different documents, now you can just look, okay, well, it was this question I'm having to answer is about the executive branch, so I should look here. This is about the U.S. Census, so I should look here. It's just what I think is a really good strategy for kind of keeping track of your notes and for really just staying better organized. So just a helpful little hint for you there. The first branch of government that we're going to talk about today is going to be the legislative branch. Now, the Constitution is actually split into a bunch of different articles, which are basically just sections. And I believe there are 7 total articles, and Article 1 deals with our legislative branch, which for all of us is basically just our Congress. 2 different houses of Congress. We talked about this a little bit in the last unit. The lower house is going to be the House of Representatives. And I'm going to give you the qualifications. In other words, what does it take to be a member of the United States House of Representatives? Firstly, you have to be 25 years old. You have to be a resident of the United States for at least 7 years. So you don't have to necessarily be born in the United States, but you must have lived here for a minimum of 7 years. So if you moved here at 18 and you live there, you live in our country the entire time, by the time you're 25 years old, you could run to be a member of the United States House of Representatives. And you must live in the state that you're representing. The term for a member of the United States House of Representatives is 2 years. The year that I'm doing this recording, this is 2014. Just earlier this week, actually, I voted on who is going to be our next member of the House of Representatives here for the state of Michigan. And so the next time I will vote on that will be in 2016. And then the year after that, 2018, 2020. So we vote on House members every 2 years, which obviously makes it to where there can be quite a bit of turnaround on the United States House of Reps. In total, there are 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. And if you remember from our last unit, states are represented in the House. In other words, they get their members that's decided on based on the state's population. So states that have a larger population have more members of the House of Representatives. States with a smaller population have less. Perfect example for you. The state of California is our biggest state in terms of population. They have the most members of the United States House of Reps. A really small state in terms of population, you look at a state like Wyoming, even though it's really big, it doesn't have a lot of people, they have very few members of the House of Representatives. And this population is decided by a census, and a census is just a count of the population that occurs in the United States every 10 years. Like I said, it's 2014, the year I'm making this video. Our most recent census was done in 2010, and our next one will be done in the year 2020. State of Michigan currently has 14 state representatives in Washington, D.C. We used to have 15 before the 2010 census, and so that number can change here and there. It can fluctuate with every census. So we actually lost one member of the House of Representatives based on what we used to have. More on our House of Representatives. The duties, if you are the job responsibilities, if you're a member of the House, are to make all national laws, declare war, so they have the ability to do that and provide for our armed forces, set up our system of courts, make impeachments, which in other words they're going to be accusing. So if the President of the United States were to be impeached, the House of Representatives would accuse, they would begin that process. They start all money bills, so any possible law that has to do with money, those are all started in the House of Representatives. And they're also responsible for figuring out taxes. Now you can see the little asterisk. These are duties that they share with our United States Senate, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute. Senate and the House are both parts of Congress. So you see some of these are shared, and other things like accusing people of impeachments and starting money bills, those are exclusive powers and responsibilities that held by the House of Representatives. I always think it's important to know who these people are. For Montcalm County, at least for the place that we're all sitting and the place that we all live, our state representative is John Moolenaar. Now, Moolenaar was just recently elected in 2014, and so he won't be officially starting his job until 2015. He is replacing Republican Dave Camp as our 4th Congressional District member. So Mr. Moolenaar will be serving for our area in Washington, D.C. For the House of Representatives. Now, if you're curious, down here it says State Representative for Michigan's 4th Congressional District. There are obviously 14 congressional districts since we have 14 members of the House. This R next to his name. Now, I want you guys to think for a second, what do you think that R stands for? Some of you might be thinking representative, but that's not correct. It's a good guess. He is going to be a Republican, therefore we put an R at the end of his name. If you're ever watching political things on TV and you see an R next to someone's name, they're a Republican. If you see a D, they are a Democrat. Move on to the next one here. The upper house. So we talked about the lower house being the House of Representatives. The upper house is going to be the United States Senate. Qualifications to be a senator. You must be a little older. You must be 30 years old. It's kind of scary. I'm now old enough to be a senator. It doesn't mean I want any of you voting for me for senator, but I am now old enough to actually be one. You must also be a resident of the United States for at least 9 years, up from 7 years, what it was for a House member. And the same as the House, you must live in the state that you represent. Now, the term for a senator is going to be much longer. It's 3 times as long, actually, as a member of the House. It's 6 years. So if you are elected senator in the year 2018, you will not be up for re-election again until 2024. If you are elected into the Senate in the year 2020, you will serve that term until 2026. So these are actually fairly long terms. The reason they do that is they don't want to have too much of the Senate reelected or losing their spots at one time. So every 2 years, 1/3 roughly of the Senate is up for election again. So again, the year I'm recording this is 2014. There were probably about 30-some senators that were up for re-election or for a new election this year. And then 2 more years from now, it'll be another third of the Senate in 2016, and same thing for 2018. So every 6 years, these guys are up for re-election. Members, there are 100 total members in the United States Senate, 2 from each state. If you remember from last unit, this was basically the New Jersey plan, which favors smaller states because they all wanted to be equal. The Virginia plan is kind of our House of Representatives. They wanted everything based on population. So in the Senate, each state is equal. So it doesn't matter that California has way bigger population than Wyoming. California and Wyoming both have 2 United States senators. Jobs that our senators have: they make all national laws, they declare war and provide our armed forces, set up our system of courts, they try the impeachment. So in other words, they will really start examining. The House of Representatives accuses the person, but it's the Senate's job on whether they want to basically get rid of the person or not. They approve the money bills. Remember, the House starts the money bills, must be approved by the Senate. They handle taxes. They also approve treaties and appointments of certain people in the government. And obviously, again, this little asterisk here basically means that they share some of these duties with the House of Representatives. So as you can see, it looks like the Senate has a little bit more job responsibilities. That's why it's called the upper house. Very similar still to the House of Representatives, but if you had to say which one has more prestige, I would think that the answer is probably going to be the Senate. Our 2 senators from the state of Michigan, as you can see, they both have D's at the end, which means they are both Democrats. This is Mr. Gary Peters. He was just recently elected in 2014. His term will not start until 2015. He is replacing a man who'd basically been senator for the last 30 or 40 years. His name was Carl Levin, and Mr. Levin elected to retire in 2014, and so Gary Peters is going to be our brand new senator starting in 2015. Debbie Stabenow is our other senator from the state of Michigan. She obviously also is a Democrat. So we have 2 even though we are a House member from Michigan, or at least from our part of Michigan is a Republican, both of our senators are Democrats. Now, I have kids all the time that really want to make sure that they can remember some of these names, because there's a good chance that some of these names may be appearing on your test. For a lot of kids, the easiest way for them to remember old Debbie Stabenow, and this is awful, but they say Debbie stab a cow. Now, please keep in mind, Debbie Stabenow, your senator, is not stabbing cows, but if it helps you to remember her name, Debbie Stab and Cows, well, great. Just make sure you write stab now if you see it on an assignment or on a test. Tell you what, the interesting ways that 8th graders remember things. Checks and balances. These are ways for the 3 branches of government to essentially check on one another to make sure that each branch is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Now, the legislative branch has checks on both the other branches, both the judicial and the executive. Here's how they do that. For the judicial branch, the Senate approves all federal judges. So if our President of the United States decides to put a new person in power, and I guess what I mean by that is if they decide to appoint a new Supreme Court justice, that has to be approved by our United States Senate. We talked about this already. Impeachment power in the House and the Senate. The House starts the impeachment process. The Senate decides whether the impeachment will actually happen for members of the judicial branch. And you can see that's the exact same with the executive branch. They have that impeachment power. The legislative branch also has the power to alter the size of the Supreme Court. Now, currently, and you'll learn this later this week, we have 9 total Supreme Court justices, but it is truly up to the legislative branch if they ever want to change that number. Checks on the executive branch. This is our president's branch. You'll learn more about that this week as well. Obviously, we talked about impeachment power. They may override presidential vetoes, and we'll talk about that this week as well. What a presidential veto is, it basically means that a president, if he or she does not like a law, that he or she, and I know I say she, we haven't had a female president yet, but I believe in your lifetime that we will, but the president can choose to veto the law. In other words, they can choose to cancel it. Now, the legislative branch can still pass that law, but they have to pass it with a higher percentage of people in Congress. But they can override, at times, a presidential veto. The Senate approves departmental appointments, treaties, and ambassadors. So anyone that the president approves or any treaties that he signs, that gets approved by Congress. Only the United States Congress has power to declare war. So the House and the Senate are the only groups that can collectively declare war. The President cannot declare war, which might surprise some of you. Now, the President can absolutely deploy troops. However, he cannot necessarily declare war. In fact, that's something that is held exclusively to the legislative branch. Legislative branch also has power to tax. And the President must from time to time deliver a State of the Union address, which we will talk more on next week. There's former President George W. Bush giving his State of the Union address. Make sure that you save these notes to your computer. Tomorrow or later this week we will go ahead and start working on Article 2, which is the executive branch, and we will go from there. Good luck.